Hello, hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Amazing.
Not
Well,
not branded today. I'm wearing a Bambi jumper.
you're Bambi today.
Yes, I am Bambi. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, not branded today.
How dare you?
I know, I
I'm
know.
telling.
It's a good thing, isn't it? It's like, who you gonna tell? Like,
Yeah,
who's gonna tell
yeah,
on me?
exactly.
Who's gonna care?
Yeah, exactly. The boss that doesn't exist. But hey ho. Well, I see that the folks are coming in, so I guess we should probably tell them what's going on, what the show is all about.
All right. Yes. So, hello. I guess the first thing we need to do is make sure that they can hear us, right? Because we can hear each other, but who knows if they can hear us? So, people of the world, as the Spice Girls used to say, can you just let us know that you can actually hear us? That would be really awesome.
Spice up your life. Da, 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 da.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. You see,
See what
it
you've
doesn't
done to
matter.
me.
Yeah. It's a classic, right? Doesn't matter how
It's a
old you
classic.
are. My children, obviously, they're what are my kids now? Are they Gen Z? I don't know, but they love that one as well.
Yeah, I don't know what mine are, but yeah, once we played it once to them in the car, that's it. It's people of the world. Da, da, da,
Spice
da.
up your life.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
It's one
There is
song I can sing with my
echo.
London accent.
Someone says that there's echo. Echo from who? Who's going? Who's echoing? Is it me? Is it Gigi?
Am I
We don't
echoing?
know. You're not echoing for me. Am I echoing for you?
Nope. Might just be Parag.
Possibly, possibly. Parag, that must be just you. But at least they can hear us. So
It's a start, isn't it? Okay. Should we get going then?
yeah, yeah. Let's get going.
Awesome. Me,
So I
you?
think probably you because I did the intro.
Oh, you did the intro last
My
time because I was late.
possibly. I don't remember, but I do remember doing an intro. So might as
Okay.
well
So,
start today.
all right. So I will do it. So, hi everyone. Gigi Yevgeny here. Welcome to our session. Just to talk to you a little bit about who we are. I am an ex Amazonian. I was there for about 5 years. I was an interviewer, hiring manager. I was in marketing for my career at Amazon, and I was a bar raiser, which most of you, I'm sure, will know. A little bit of the history in terms of how I got into this, and I'll hand you over to Yevgeny. He can give you his backstory. Essentially, I was interviewing loads and loads at Amazon, as most hiring managers are. I became a bar raiser, and one thing I noticed was there was a big difference. I could tell people that had had proper interview preparation from someone who knew what they were talking about and people that didn't. The ones that knew what that they were talking about, they had the jargon, they really understood the leadership principles, they knew which buttons to press that would really, oh, I was going to say turn us on, but that's not the right thing to say at all, is it, on YouTube? Certainly not on this channel anyway. That would get us excited. It's getting even worse. I just got curious, as any Amazonian would, and tried to find out kind of what did it cost to have this type of support. And it was a couple of years ago now, and discovered it was pretty expensive. Candidates were out there paying like 2.5 grand for someone to support them for a period of time. And I thought that that was unfair, quite honestly. So I created a YouTube channel giving away tons of free content whilst I was still at Amazon. When I left Amazon, I decided to see if I could turn this into some kind of a little side hustle to kind of pay a few bills. And that then evolved into what was the Amazon Interviewers Academy, running my own little business, offering coaching and digital courses. And then I met Yevgeny and we joined forces, and we now are together day one careers. I'm going to hand to Yevgeny and he can tell you his story.
Thank you, Gigi. So my story is fairly similar. So I was at Amazon for 3.5 years. I was a marketing leader and then a category leader. Um, and as most Amazonians do, I was interviewing quite extensively for my own team, for partner teams, and then similarly to Gigi, I started noticing that some candidates who were better prepared when it comes to interview skills and their knowledge of Amazon quirks were doing better in interviews, even though they would have pretty much the same highly relevant and strong profile as some candidates who weren't as prepared and ended up doing not as well in their interviews. So what I did is first I started running little experiments. So I would do my first phone interview with a candidate, and if I noticed that the candidate had a really good profile but wasn't just quite cutting it with regards to interview performance, rather than recycling them right away, I would progress them to phone screen number 2. But rather than giving them more question and answer type follow-ups and drill downs, I would instead give them a little bit of coaching, and I would say, look, this, you probably need to prepare a bit more if you want to do well. So I would give them a little bit of coaching, then I would progress them to phone screen 2, and then lo and behold, candidates started getting further in the interview process. And so that was my insight into how actually interview skills with regards to Amazon are coachable. So similarly to Gigi, I set up Day One Careers as a brand at the time, and I started with coaching, and then I quickly realized that I was unable to handle all the coaching volume, and also all the questions and all the um, uh, what's the word? All the areas where I was coaching candidates, they were essentially repeating themselves. So I converted all this knowledge into digital courses, and then at some point in time, there was one candidate who I ended up coaching, but also Gigi ended up coaching, who basically said, "Hey guys, you need to work together." And so we met in the pub, and then from early this year, we started working together. So we merged our businesses under Day One Careers, and the rest is history. The only thing that I would say is, similarly to Gigi, I also do believe that stuff like Amazon interview skills and interview skills in general, they need to be available to a lot more people than they would have been available had we not launched at the prices that I believe are quite competitive. So yeah, our mission is to make these skills available to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. So, on that note, just to show you how this whole session is going to run, you can ask us any question you like. You just drop the question into the little chat box on the right-hand side. Please try and contain your question into a single, I know there is a word limit, but into a single one. It gets very confusing when people spread it across, especially when there's big numbers attending. It's a little bit quiet at the moment. I think Amazon is pulling back a bit on its recruiting. So, but try and contain it into a single question. Please don't ask us very generic questions. Hi, Gigi, Evgeny, I've got a program manager interview tomorrow. Any tips? Yeah, an entire YouTube channel full of those, as we can't really answer general questions because there's nowhere for us to kind of hook to. Equally, please don't ask us very specific questions. I am being interviewed tomorrow for a technical program manager. What technical questions can I expect? There are tens of thousands of job families in Amazon. We are not technical experts on all of them and couldn't possibly retain that amount of information in our heads anyway. So we're not going to be able to answer very specific technical questions either, but anything in between we can do. So it's a bit quiet there on the chat now. Can you, if you have questions, please do just kind of bang them down there and drop them into the chat, and we will attempt to answer them. Don't be shy. Having said, don't ask us anything on those two extremes. Pretty much anything else goes. So why don't you bang your questions down? We'll give it a couple of seconds and see what questions come up. My daughter's hanging around and obviously wants to ask me a question. So I'm just going to go on mute for a second whilst you all write your questions, but please do not be shy.
Yes, indeed. Do not be shy. Other than those two extremes that Gigi mentioned, any question is a good question, as long as they are about behavioral interviews at Amazon. And as Gigi mentioned, for generic advice, there's plenty of content, which is completely free on our YouTube channel. And there's also blog if you guys prefer to read rather than watch. You can go to our blog, which you can find at blog.day1.careers. But otherwise, we're here for you guys for this entire hour. If you guys have any questions about behavioral interviews at Amazon, drop them into the comments box. If you can, type them into one question rather than spreading it across multiple chats. And here we have the first question. Why don't I pull it up while others are typing them up? So the question is from Square Biz, and the question is, can you discuss the length of an answer as far as time and the level of detail for an L6 position? So this is GovCloud. I'm guessing it's AWS GovCloud. So I'll take this one, and the answer is, We try to avoid giving a specific runtime target, because when we do that, folks end up just overpsyching themselves on trying to fit their story into a particular runtime. And the minute you overpsych yourself in an interview, you're no longer in the zone. This story doesn't flow well, and you want exactly the opposite to happen, right? You want to be in the zone, you want to be comfortable, relaxed, so that you can actually recall all the details that you need to recall to raise the bar on leadership principles and on your seniority. So what we tend to say is, if you have a story that's worth telling, do tell the story. We do have plenty of advice that basically tell you what facts are valuable to Amazon and what facts are or facts and details are not valuable to Amazon. But generally speaking, we don't sort of advise on a particular runtime. Now, if you're the sort of individual who does need a target, then for an L6, I'm gonna say 8 minutes. That's your target. So if you have to have one, there you go. That's a target. Don't worry. Now, is it okay if your story is 7 minutes? Yes, it's fine. Is it okay if it's 9 minutes? Yes, it's absolutely fine. The reason why we're saying it's fine is because you can even come across an interviewer who won't allow you to run through your entire story. They'll just start jumping in with questions and follow-ups and drill downs, and then you have to get yourself back on track. And so your entire runtime is, well, who knows how long it is right now. So don't worry about it. The one thing that we do try to remind everyone, and I hope Gigi will give me a nod of approval here, is that there's a lot of guidance out there from various different dodgy sources that tries to tell candidates to cram their stories into a 2-minute summary. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Gigi, but apparently if the story is longer than 2 minutes, then the interviewer gets bored and switches off. So this cannot be further from the truth. Amazon is there to collect details, evidence on whether you have demonstrated bar raising behaviors in the past, and they will give you the time to land those details. So there you go. I don't know what else I can find. Gigi, can you add something else?
No, no, you've got it perfectly covered. You're absolutely right. I think
oh yeah, the one thing is, it's about the level of detail for an L6, which I did not cover. Do you think it's something you could cover?
It's very hard to articulate the level of detail without actually going through an entire L6 example. So I think there's some kind of common sense, dare I say, that one has to introduce into all of this. You're trying to demonstrate how you behaved. So if you're trying to demonstrate how you behaved in terms of trying to convince somebody to do something that they didn't want to do, you're going to have to get us to the detail of, well, what did you say to them? What were you thinking about when you were thinking about going into the meeting, and what strategies were you planning on, and why did you implement those strategies? You're going to have to get to that level of detail. What you don't need to tell us is that when you walked in the room, they had a smile on the face or a frown on their face, or when you walked into the room, they were wearing a blue blazer and green pants. I was going to say shorts, but no.
And the rain was
and it was raining. Yeah. So there's a level of common sense that you have to apply. You're trying to talk about how you behaved in a situation. So you have to put some kind of a sense check that when you look at your story, ask yourself, am I describing how I behaved? Have I got to the point where I've got to such level of detail that I'm going well beyond how I behaved, and I'm kind of now into the levels of ridiculous? So it's really, really difficult to tell you exactly what that looks like just sitting here. But hopefully what I've said to you at least gives you kind of some sense of behavior and the level of detail that you need to get into. Okay, so I'm going to pick another one, which is Joshi. Hi, is remote working an option if multiple locations are listed for the job? Not necessarily. They may want you to be physically in a building in one of those locations, because maybe they have multiple teams that are spread across those locations. So couldn't make that assumption. And Josh, I would tell you, if you specifically want to be able to work remotely, this should be something that you raise with your recruiter as soon as possible. If it is knockout question isn't the right word. I don't know what deal breaker. That's what I'm looking for. If it's a deal breaker for you that you have to be able to work remotely, do not waste anybody's time going through the interview process without discovering whether you can or cannot work remotely, because that's just a waste of everybody's time. Would be my advice.
Concur. Indeed. All right. Here is a question from, is it Hani? Is it Haney? I don't know, but I will butcher a lot of names. My apologies. And it's just, I've got a name that's been butchered for the last 20 years, so I know what it feels like. So sorry about that. But the question is, hi Gigi, I finished the final interview and it was good. Okay, we'll get to that. Well, actually, good means. But let's see. This was from 2 months, and I never heard again from them till now. I'm still under consideration at the application. What you think? I think that it really depends on what you mean by it was good, because if you had an inclined loop, if at the debrief they voted to as inclined, they're inclined to hire you, but they did not have a job for you at the time for one reason or another, they still decided to interview you and you managed to get yourself in an inclined loop, then whether that inclined result is still good, then the answer is most likely yes. It would be good for 6 months, as long as you interview for, as long as you compete for the same role somewhere else. It needs to be exactly the same role at the same level. That's as far as I understand. Even if you interview for a completely different role, you will still have a record on your applicant tracking system file that said that you managed to get yourself an inclined loop result, which is also a positive result. Now, the fact that you haven't heard from them until now, it's something that you probably need to deal with yourself. You should be following up with them and answering and asking them what is happening, and getting your recruiters to find you a job. If what you mean that by it was good is indeed the inclined loop result. Do you have a different interpretation of this, Gigi?
I'm guessing that it was good is Hanny's interpretation of what went on in the loop, and what's actually happened is that you've finished your loop and you still haven't heard from your recruiter 2 months later. If that interpretation is true, you need to chase them and try and get an actual outcome. Don't rely on that jobs board or the client candidate facing system. It's manually updated by recruiters. So if they forget you, then they've forgotten you. So I would be chasing your recruiter. And also, if you know who the hiring manager was who you met at Loop, which I assume you do, I would also be reaching out to them on LinkedIn and asking them what the final outcome was of your Loop. But you should have heard back a long time ago if you did your Loop 2 months ago and you still haven't heard anything. Okay, we just pop on to the next one. I just want to quickly do this one. Gosh, that's a lovely image. What is that image? Is that an insect or a fish or something?
Well, it looks like a
butterfly.
A butterfly, or one of those fantasy creatures.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, I get easily distracted by people's profile pictures. So Aniban, congratulations! You got yourself in as an SDE1. Amazing. Do you know what? Obviously, this is showing my age, but I wish I'd gone into dev. The amount of money that is possible to achieve as a software development manager is unbelievable. We had a candidate, it was like multiple millions, wasn't it, for an L7 software development manager?
Yes, it was. The compensation package was pretty hefty, and Gigi and I are trying to run our own database of offers that our paid students are kindly sharing with us, and some of the amounts of money that are going into solutions architects, software developers, and some sales people are absolutely ridiculous. So
Mind
well done, you.
blowing. Yes. Well done, you. You are on the best and most amazing path. So, congratulations. And we are delighted that we were able to help you in probably some small way. So, there we go. Now, let me just pop this one up. Oh, I'm going to really, really make a ham fist of this one, aren't I? Thamiz, Thamil Zelvan. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I should stop. Thammy. Can I just do Thammy? I hope that's okay. Apologize to your parents for me. Okay.
This, if I'm not mistaken, and Tammy, let us know if it's not. But your name, I think it sounds Tamil. Just drop us in the let me know if I'm correct in the comments section. But anyway, Gigi, go ahead.
How would you say it? Come on.
I would say it's probably Tamil Selvan Chinnasamy. Chinna means small in
Oh.
in Tamil.
Oh, there we go. Learn something new every day. Okay, so senior Bibs Ops manager position, 3 or 4 rounds done. Fourth round is with manager. Okay, I'm not sure whether any of these 4 rounds includes bar raising rounds or will it happen as a fifth round. All right, so little bit confused here. And that's because these ideas, the words rounds don't really fit too well and can be confusing. So I think what you're saying is that you are at the final stage, so you're at loop, and in your loop, there are 4 individual interviews that you're going to have, and that you have done 3 of them, and you've got 1 left to go. That's my interpretation, rather than a kind of a linear one, which is round 1, your first phone screen, round 2, your second phone screen, round 3, a third phone screen, which shouldn't happen, round 4, a fourth phone screen. That should never happen. So that's why I'm discounting that as being the essence of what you're saying, that you're talking about me being at final stage and you've gone through your different interviews. So it depends what level you are interviewing for. In that you've only got 4 rounds, you're unlikely to be interviewing for an L6. You may be interviewing for an L5. I suspect you're more likely interviewing for an L4, because even for an L5, you would usually have more than 4 interviewers. When it comes to L4s, Amazon are rolling out, or they have been implementing a new process for quite some time now, I think, where L4s don't necessarily get interviewed by a bar raiser. Some do. It doesn't cover all L4 positions, but some L4 positions are no longer being interviewed by a bar raiser. You will have a bar raiser, but you will never meet them and you will never see them, because they will kind of operate in the background, orchestrating the actual interview setup and making sure that the right kind of range of interviewers are there, diversity, everyone's got the right qualifications, the right number of interviews under their belt. And then they will then facilitate the debrief. They will read all of the notes taken by all of the interviewers. They will work with the interviewers at the debrief to discuss your performance. And they, as the bar raiser, will bring the debrief to a conclusion to decide whether you are raising the bar or not. But if you have not yet been told that there is a 5th interview in your loop, then there will not be a 5th interview in your loop, and you can expect to finish up your 4th one, and then they will all go into debrief. That would be my interpretation of your question. Make sense, Evgeny? Do you think I've got that one right?
You've got that one right, and apparently I've got that right as well, because the name is Tamil.
Yay! You're so clever.
Yes, thank God for having a Tamil wife. I don't just know these things off my bat.
I can do the
Right,
Irish ones. That's about
brilliant.
it.
You should so
Very
do that.
strange. Yeah, they're crazy, right? I ever see what like Saoirse looks like in actual written down, but anyway.
Or Siobhan, that's my favorite.
Yeah, Neve, Siobhan, name it. Right,
Yeah.
go on, your turn.
Okay, cool. So Josh is asking, is it then advisable to give as many details as possible in the first go of the example instead of waiting for the follow-up questions? Yeah, I'm gonna say, look, within reason, share the details that demonstrate the depth and the complexity of the problem that you were solving. I would say 4 or 5 actions that you took to demonstrate the steps that you took, and enough time to clearly state your objective which is the T in the star format, but we call it objectives because it makes more sense. It's less confusing as to what is actually important from you. And then obviously share some data to demonstrate impact in the results section. And then I would also go as far as to say, and share a couple of thoughts about what you would do differently or improve in the I section in what we call the STARI, right? The situation, task, actions, results, and potential improvements. So yeah, I'd err on the side of sharing more as opposed to less. And trust me, if your interviewer wants to steer you in a different direction or follow up on a particular section to get something else out of you, they'll do so, right? But the opposite of trying to give out a summary and then leaving the court in the leaving the ball in the interviewer's court to unwrap your story and follow up on stuff, it will go into a very difficult interview for you as the candidate and for the interviewer. So I would, if you have to err on the side of more rather than less. What would you think, Gigi?
So there are very divided opinions on this one, and I've definitely spoken to Amazon interviewers who have literally told me I prefer candidates not to give me too much information and then I can get it out on follow-up, which is fine. But it depends on your interviewer being a decent interviewer, right? Because you're then hoping they're going to ask you the right question so that you can get out the behavior that you did and is stored away in your back pocket. Well, if they don't ask you the right question, or indeed if they don't ask you any follow-up questions, you're completely stuffed because you have got those behaviors, but you've just never had a chance to put it out on the table. So although there are unquestionably interviewers who would prefer that you hold back and they can lead the interview, it's a very high risk strategy as far as I'm concerned. And you're better off taking ownership of your own interview, making sure that if you have a piece of information that you believe demonstrates a behavior, that you put it out there on the table. Otherwise, you risk not actually ever getting it on the table and having a declined outcome, not because you don't have those behaviors, you simply weren't given the opportunity to get that evidence on the table. It's my point of view.
Totally agree.
Okie dokie. All right, I'm just going to cover this one off quickly. So, can we discuss the LPs that will be tested for a non-tech program manager? No. And the reason why I'm just pulling this one up and then saying no is, as I mentioned at the start, and maybe this person wasn't here at the start, there are tens of thousands of job families in Amazon. We don't know the key leadership principles for every single one of them. And even within a non-tech program manager role, there will be very, very different priorities for different teams, different managers. So we will never just sit here and try and reel off key leadership principles for any particular job family, because we may be wrong. And the last thing we would want to do is pretend that we know all of this information. You go off and prepare something and then discover that that's not actually the fact. So we don't do that, although other people might. So what we suggest to you is you need to deconstruct your job description to really, really understand what the hiring manager who wrote the job description cares about. To be able to do that, there are 2 videos on the YouTube channel that show you me deconstructing live other candidates' job descriptions. And I show you how you can connect language to the concepts of the leadership principles. So please go watch those videos. The other thing that you should do is speak to your recruiter. Ask them if they will share with you what those key leadership principles are. You can always try and reach out to somebody within Amazon who has that role in Amazon and ask them their view of what important leadership principles are for that job family. I think that works better when you're working to a very specific job family. So, for example, a network solutions engineer is a very specific job family. There's not a lot of scope of deviation in there. When you're talking about program management, that's a hugely diverse job family, hugely diverse. And what is important in program management in, I don't know, a particular area of Amazon Air might not be important for program management in, for example, Amazon Studios. So I'd be less comfortable with directing you in that direction. We do also provide a service where I can deconstruct your job description for you, but I would suggest you start out trying to do it for yourself and speaking to your recruiter and seeing if they'll do it for you or if they'll let you know what they are for that particular role. Okay, Do you have one you want to pick, Yevgeny, or will I pick another?
We could, but or we could take a break and do our
Oh, is it that time
usual.
already?
It's
Oh
that
my
time already.
goodness. I really do need to do a new one of these. I keep saying this. I'm such a failure in this regard. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. Do you want me to introduce what we're going to be doing now, and then you can
Yeah,
press the
go
right
on.
buttons?
You
Okay,
introduce
cool.
that.
So, folks, as you know, we are working tirelessly to bring you a ton of free content out there. And as you will know, YouTube, we've got a channel with loads of videos. It all takes a lot of time, and we're all doing it for you. We want to make sure that you guys are getting the most credible Amazon interview expertise out there. However, if you go and search for Amazon interview questions and other stuff on YouTube, you will inevitably come across some real dodgy stuff, like videos that were created by folks who even never even worked at Amazon. And the reason why you're getting this content is because YouTube's search algorithm rewards content that has tenure, right? So old stuff and old videos with lots of views before we started producing our videos, they're still getting a lot of exposure. So we want to make sure that the right stuff gets to candidates. Our free content, which we know that folks are watching, and it helps them prepare. So, in order to help us help you guys and other candidates, we've got two requests from you. Number one, can you give this stream a like? The other one is, could you give us a comment? Whether it's just a comment on how much you're enjoying our content, or if you have a question, just post it in the comments underneath this video so that we signal to the YouTube algorithm that you guys are enjoying this content, you're finding it credible, and you want, very importantly, you want other candidates to prepare using credible content as opposed to all the dodgy stuff. And to give you a little bit of time to do this, which I'm hoping is very easy and not much to ask, Gigi is going to run some entertainment for you,
Yeah.
which will embarrass me massively.
Right, it's going to run some VC. It is a little bit loud, everybody. So, just kind of move your headphones slightly off your ears for a few seconds. And I keep promising I'll fix that. I will eventually fix that. Here we go. Run VC.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
Amazing.
There we go, everybody. Hopefully, not too many of you will be visiting your therapists over the next coming days and telling them about that experience. But yeah, please do like this video and also any of our videos that you watch. I'm sure you'll all go away or have already watched a whole bunch of our content. Please, it doesn't take much. Just give it a click little on the like, and that pays me back for the about 3 hours that it took me to produce that piece of content.
Yes. Now,
Okay.
shall I go? Let me go and pick
Go pick
our
another
next
one.
question. Right. So this is a three-part question, but I can see all the three parts. So let's go. So this one is from Ahmed. Hi, I failed the phone screen last week on an engagement management role. The hiring manager was also shadowing there. Interesting. Even though my performance wasn't bad from my perspective, it's a fact that I could not make it through. Okay, so far makes sense, except for the hiring manager shadowing. But let's keep going. So I can't really tell if I failed with the hiring manager or the interviewer. Okay, so the hiring manager wasn't interviewing; the hiring manager was shadowing. Do you see this happening a lot, Gigi?
Yeah, if that person is training, if the actual interviewer is training to interview, the fact that it's the hiring manager being the shadow is probably, I think, a little bit of a red herring. You've got
It is.
a
It is.
interviewer in training and someone shadowing them. In this case, it just happened to be the hiring manager, but you often would have somebody from your team shadowing you if you were training to be an interviewer. I think it's just kind of coincidence that happened to be the hiring manager.
Yes, very interesting. Never had that experience as an interviewer, but hey ho, live and learn. At my location, there are still open engagement manager roles available. Should I apply, hoping that the hiring manager is the owner, or wait a couple of months to become more ready for Amazon? It's very hard to answer this question because we don't know why you failed your phone screen. So we don't really know that, and there's also because as you probably can tell now that you've had your phone interview, phone screens, they don't follow the same, or they're not as rigid in terms of the how they run. The loops tend to be more structured around specific behavioral rounds, non-behavioral rounds, or at least they're a lot more predictable. And in a lot more cases, the candidates are being told what is being tested in one interview or the other. But phone screens is a bit of a catch-all, right? And that's something that you probably know, which is why it's difficult to tell whether it's the functional question that you failed on, whether it was behavioral or something else. If I were you, and this is, and Gigi might have a different advice for you, if I were you, I wouldn't try to manage for a different hiring manager. What I would do is I would just take this phone interview as input. That let's just assume that your career experience and what you are bringing to Amazon, let's assume for the moment that it's enough, for you, that actually you're good for Amazon. And the only difference was the lack of interview preparation. See, interview preparation is something that you can fix, right? Or at least you can work on it, and you can invest time and effort and get your interview skills, specifically when it comes to Amazon, up to scratch. Your career is very difficult to change right now. So my advice would be something in the middle, right? Between doing nothing and then waiting for a long period of time. So I would assume for now that your profile is good for the job, and I would actually invest in preparing to interview well at Amazon. Take as much time as you need. I don't know, like you're suggesting a couple of months. I don't know if you need a couple of months, right? You may need 2 to 3 weeks, right? But from our experience, 1.5 weeks is usually enough to prepare for the loop. And if you're prepared enough for the loop, you're prepared enough for the phone screen. So if you do want to try again, so I would take maybe 3 to 4 weeks, up to 4 weeks, to get yourself up to scratch. And then once you feel like you're in a good spot, and definitely our community can tell you, and we as potential coaches can tell you if you're prepared well, then start hunting for the same type of jobs that for which you were pulled into a phone screen, and see what happens in that next phone screen. If you've got what it takes in terms of profile, I would imagine that your performance would be a lot better this time. But Gigi, what would you advise Ahmed?
It's a bit 50-50, to be honest with you, because if you really felt that you're there and you've got everything that you need, then sure, apply again and see what happens. And if you fail again, then that's clearly a second data point that tells you don't really have everything that you need, and you need to take some time out and brush up on your skills and maybe take some courses or whatever it is. Equally, if you're in no desperate rush, then you could just take that time now and assume that there was some kind of a gap and work hard to fill said gap. One can always develop more, and then you've got at least one less strike, on your record than if you learnt that by having another go at it. 50-50. I think it just depends on kind of whether you want to validate the fact that you need to do some more work, or whether actually you're better off just to do some more work, because we can always improve. I did spot, Yevgeny, that Ahmet said a bit further down that the hiring manager had only been in Amazon for 3 months, and the interviewer had been around longer. Exactly. So in this case, it's a hiring manager who is the unqualified person who is shadowing the qualified person, because not only are they probably in training, but also it helps if the hiring manager sees the candidate early on in the process. And if this hiring manager is not yet a qualified interviewer, they can't do that other than if they sit and shadow a qualified interviewer. So I spotted that a little bit further down, so I thought I would just call that out. Okay, shall we pick another one then?
Go ahead.
Do this one from Top Cat. Oh, did you get to watch Top Cat as a kid? Did you get Top Cat where you grew up? Top Cat,
sadly,
beautiful
no.
leader of the gang. No, okay. If your kids
I watched Felix the Cat, but not Top Cat.
Oh, you should. Okay, look it up on YouTube. Your kids will like Top Cat. He's fun. Okay. So Top Cat, you got a phone screen 2 request for a level 6. Does it mean that they are giving you a second chance and my first round was not satisfying enough? Nope. It's their process. So different teams choose to lean into different aspects. It's a bit like a menu of stages that you can choose for an Amazon interview process, and different teams use different stages. So some teams have the online assessment only, and they take candidates straight through to loop. Other teams have online assessment round 1 straight through to loop. Other teams have online assessment round 1, round 2, and then on to loop. You happen to be interviewing for a team who has a standard process of round 1, then round 2, then on to loop. It has nothing whatsoever to do with giving a second chance. They have someone's interviewed you at round 1 and fancies your chances of potentially being successful at loop, and now you have to go through a second round to convince a second person again that you have a good chance of being able to get through a loop. It's just the nature of this team's process. Other people will experience different processes.
Indeed,
Hopefully that
indeed they will.
covers that off.
That does. Just gonna cover this one quickly. So, for a business analyst position, how much proficiency in SQL is proficient enough? So we wouldn't know because it's a functional question. But from my experience, I can tell you that. So I've learned enough SQL to just pull some sales data from Amazon in 3 to 4. And I had to go to my business analysts to basically teach me still after 4 or 5 months. So I would imagine that the level of proficiency needs to be pretty high, especially that you're going to be doing this for quite a lot in depth. But that was like a cheeky question. I'm just gonna pick a real one. So this one is from Mutsa. Hello. If you were not successful at the first attempt, do you still have a chance to if you apply again? And what's your advice on what to do to get an interview invite after submitting your resume? So the answer to the first question is yes, you can apply again and you can be successful. In fact, in our community, we've got loads of examples of folks who managed to get an offer after multiple rejections. There is even one gentleman who lives in Canada who got himself an L7 L7 offer, principal solutions architect with AWS, after failing 3 times at an L6 over the course of 2 years before he got himself an L7 offer. I mean, this is clearly an outlier, but even these things do happen. So yes, you do have a chance. And the second question is, what do you need to do to get an interview invite after submitting your resume? Quite frankly, you just need to make sure that you are submitting your applications to jobs that are relevant. If you have a profile that is relevant to the job, they'll pull your profile out and they will invite you to the interview. And the fact that you had a rejection at a phone screen, it's usually not that big of a deal. And I am not aware of any cooling off periods after phone screens unless something horribly wrong went in your interview, which it doesn't look like it did. The other thing that you can do is get referrals. Referrals do work. They won't guarantee that you will get an interview, but they will make sure that your profile jumps into a different queue for the hiring manager to review. So that's all I've got. Gigi, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, that's it. Covers it off perfectly. Should we pop Mutsa back? I just want to pull this one out. Julia, wanting to thank us and send some appreciation. We always appreciate appreciation. Don't we, Evgeny?
We run on it. That's our fuel.
Yeah, it's always nice to be appreciated. You watched a lot of our videos and you got your AWS offer and you're joining in January. That's quite
amazing.
a long lead time, isn't that? It's like September now, isn't it? So awesome. You've got a bit of a run up. So I hope you managed to get some time off between the job that you are leaving and the job that you are joining. But congratulations, everyone here at Day One Careers. And there are a few other people other than Yevgeny and myself. Wish you a fantastic Amazon career. And of course, remember us when you are on the inside. Please do recommend us to all of your colleagues and, of course, your candidates. Little plug there. Okay, so I'm going to pick a real one now as well, Evgeny. So here we go. So, oh, Mutsa, that's you again. All right, I'll do this one quickly. I didn't realize that was you again, but never mind. Is highlighting. I think you mean highlighting, but yeah, maybe you know where I live. There'll be plenty of people around where I live that would say, is highlighting on my resume that you worked in
Love it.
Amazon before? Any old iron?
That reminds me of what's his name? Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke's
yeah,
take on East London.
Yeah, that's the very bad acne. I suppose the Hackney accent. Yes, no. Moving on, I'll kind of revert to my normal kind of plum English accent. Is it highlighting on your resume that you worked at Amazon for a plus, or doesn't matter in offering you a chance to be called in for an interview? Okay, so Mutsa, this is really subjective. Okay, there are no rules anywhere that says to a hiring manager, if someone has worked at Amazon before, you must interview them. But, and I'll give you my point of view, and then Yevgeny's also been a hiring manager, so I'll hand over to him for his thoughts. If I had seen on a candidate's resume that they had worked at Amazon for a substantial period of time, and okay, Gigi, what do you mean by substantial? I mean probably anything over a year. If they had worked at Amazon for a year or over, I would be much more likely to be interested in interviewing them, because I would have some confidence that they could function and operate well within the Amazon environment. Amazon is a peculiar, intentionally peculiar place, and knowing that someone understands its machinations and its idiosyncrasies and has been able to be there for a year and therefore some indication of success would give you some high confidence that this person, if they could raise the bar on the leadership principles, would be a successful Amazonian. So that would be my thinking, but how much it would influence my decision would obviously be very subject to the other variables within the resume as to whether they were a good looking candidate or not. Would you feel any differently, Evgeny?
Yeah, I'd be very similar in the way that, it would spark my interest, and I'd definitely take a look at the profile. And again, from stories of some folks who used to work with me in different teams at Amazon who left and then decided to boomerang back to Amazon. I know that from the experience that they shared with me, it sounds like that they were considered on exactly the same merits as any other candidate, and actually some of them managed to boomerang and some of them didn't. So I think, yeah, as far as the interest to the profile, in my case, I'd definitely be very keen to see if your profile would be relevant. But in terms of what happens at the interview in all these subsequent stages, I think you can expect to be interviewed exactly on the same grounds as anyone else.
Cool. Okay, let me oh, it's your turn now, isn't it?
I can pick
Yeah,
this
it's
one.
your
Okay.
turn.
So this one is from Anshul. Hi, I responded to a recruiter's email asking for my availability for the first phone screen interview almost 3.5 weeks ago, but HR followed up a few days later with new dates, which I agreed to. Okay. I'm still waiting for HR to confirm the interview, but it appears that HR has vanished and is not responding back. This did actually occur. What really should I do? So sadly, it does occur. They do vanish in the ether sometimes. And by HR, you probably mean your recruiter, because at Amazon, HR is a function that takes you over once you join, but not before. Recruiters do sometimes vanish, not physically, although it does happen sometimes that they leave the company physically.
And there's plenty of recruiters leaving physically at the moment because contracts are not being renewed. So it is possible they vanished.
Indeed, and some of them are contractors. So you should follow up with other recruiters. Just track them down on LinkedIn and let them know that you were in the process of having your loop set up, and your recruiter has vanished. And hopefully someone else will pick up your case and push your interview through. That's kind of the only thing that I've got in my mind. Gigi, would you get anything else to spare?
No other advice beyond that. Nothing, I'm afraid. Okay, Thank you for that, Yevgeny. I'm just going to pick this one up. So, what is the turnaround time after the loop interview? So, there is a SLA, a candidate promise that Amazon has, which is that after loop, you should get your answer within 5 working days. So, you can't count the day that your loop was on. You then start counting the day after the loop. So, 5 working days from the day after your loop. That said, I think it's been a long time now that I've been hearing and saying to candidates that quite often the SLA just isn't being met. When I was at Amazon, pretty confident that it was met about 90% of the time. But since kind of picking up this role, it's been very clear that recruiters are just struggling to keep up. They hire at such a high volume. Some recruiters are dealing with up to like 25, 30 recs jobs at a time. And if you think that at any given point in time, each rec might have 5 candidates going through the process, these recruiters are dealing with hundreds of people at any given point in time. So although I'm not excusing a failure to meet the SLA is there for a reason. If you haven't heard within the 5 days or the 5 working days post your loop, please don't assume that you have not made it. That's not always going to be the case. We've definitely had candidates of ours who it's taken 2, sometimes even 3 weeks to hear back, and they've got an inclined outcome of their loop. It's just taken that long for the recruiter to get back to them. So in theory, 5 working days. In reality, it can take materially longer than that. Don't assume you haven't got the role until someone's actually told you you haven't got the role, would be my guidance. Anything to add, Yevgeny?
No, not really. Not really. Here is a question that I think is interesting. Makes me think. So, still Top Cat. And the question is, if my LP answer is related to creating a framework / methodology, benefiting the team and the larger organization in a way that may not have some direct metrics of data, how can I satisfy the interviewer? So I would say that, well, first of all, do challenge yourself if you why you want to share this answer, because presumably you want to share this answer because there's something in the story that either makes you proud, or you might have received some sort of accolades at work. So there's a reason why you think that this is your best foot forward for a particular LP answer. Is this the right story to share? Because ideally, and as you will know, you would want to share stories that have some measurable results that you can use to demonstrate your impact. That being said, if you do believe that this is one of your best sellers, then the way to get around this, and this is my trick, is to frame the objective, frame the task in such a way that sharing your result as a binary fact, that is, I have delivered the said projects with the said deadline and received commendations, and it was accepted, approved by some senior leadership. I'm completely inventing this, but if you frame the objective in the same way, it is still measurable. It just becomes binary, right? Rather than having, let's say, a number line representing some sort of KPI like sales, right, or any other KPI, weeks of cover for supply managers, you have an interim KPI, which is you've delivered something and it's been accepted, approved, and acclaimed. What you can do is frame your task in this manner, so that when you share your results, essentially you're saying, well, yeah, I've accomplished everything that I've set to accomplish, and received all various different commendations. It's not as good as having tangible results in terms of outcomes, but if you're coming from the sort of industry where you oftentimes have to hand frameworks, business approaches, and other blue book McKinsey style stuff to to companies and to other stakeholders and customers, then it, it's the best thing that you can do. And if you are coming from this industry, then do mention this, and this will add the relevant context. But that would be my tip. Gigi, what would be your suggestion to Top Cat?
I guess the only other thing I can think of in terms of creating some kind of a impact metric would be to maybe talk about how many teams are now using this framework. So if this framework was built for a particular type of team, you could say something like, there are 25 versions of these teams in my organization, and all 25 of them have now migrated to this framework, or 22 have migrated to the framework and the next 3 are working on it in the next quarter, or something along those lines. So there are probably some kind of an impact metric that you might be able to create for this type of a scenario. But if not, to Yevgeny's point, setting up your goal and being able to just say I achieved my goal is at least something that shows I had a plan and I delivered against that plan. Okay, so I'm just going to pick this one, Yevgeny. It's slightly unusual and it's going to be a little bit subjective in terms of my answer, but I'm going to pick it because it feels like I should. So this is Alex. And he's asking, how do I think that Amazon has a special attitude to candidates from the Ukraine? I shouldn't say the, because it's not that, from Ukraine. I know that Amazon helps a lot, but what about hiring? What do I think? So to your point, Alex, this is completely subjective. This is my thinking. This is not a factual statement that I can support with anything. My view on this would be, of course, Amazon, maybe not of course, Amazon, as far as we understand, is being supportive and doing certain things to support the situation in Ukraine. I would suspect that it is unlikely that they will introduce positive bias into their recruiting process simply because a candidate is from Ukraine. They will try and create situations where you can have an interview, if the situation is where you're in a, your contextual circumstances make it hard to have an actual interview, they will do everything they can to make that possible for you. But I doubt very much that, regardless of whether it's Ukraine or any other environment around the world, that Amazon would introduce a positive bias to favor candidates in those particular circumstances. They'll do whatever they can to make it possible for a candidate who is worthy of the interview to be able to have the interview, but I would be very, very unlikely to believe that they would introduce a positive bias for any kind of person's individual circumstances, whether it's cultural, socioeconomic, etc., etc. That's my view. Yevgeny, would you think differently from your experience at Amazon? At the end of the day, it's the right candidate for the right job.
No, I at a policy. So first of all, Alexei, Slava Ukraine. I had to put it out there. But at a policy level, I totally agree with you. I don't think that in terms of hiring there would be any positive bias towards anyone. The only thing that I can think about is making sure that if a Ukrainian candidate does qualify and obviously raise the bar, then Amazon might be more lenient, and I'm saying might be because I don't know, might be more lenient with regards to stuff like relocation and immigration assistance and that sort of stuff. That's kind of what I could assume. As a hiring manager, this would be entirely individually subjective, because some hiring managers, their eye may be cast on a candidate with a Ukrainian profile. Some folks wouldn't. The general sense within these big companies is indeed that they're doing quite a lot to support. But at a hiring policy, I would imagine that they would want to maintain as much of an unbiased approach as possible. The only thing that I can think about where they could potentially increase their efforts is just to break down the admin barriers for the right Ukrainian talent to flow into the organization. That's all I can think about.
And I can see Alex has said that he's already in the US, in Washington State anyway. So your point about immigration, etc., I think would be a bit
Yeah,
moot,
that's been
other than-
dealt with.
Yeah. Okay, we are at time, Yevgeny, and I have to jump in the car and take Maeve off to a dancing lesson. So, and I know you have to go as well. So should we just pop up the banner and then show folks where they can get more of our amazing free content?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so here we go, everybody. So please go to this URL, which I'm no longer over the top of, Yevgeny is. So you point your fingers down, Yevgeny. Right. This is an amazing piece of free content. It's a big kind of deep dive, if you'll pardon the pun, into the customer obsession leadership principle. What you'll see there is our kind of model for learning about the leadership principles, which is unique to us. We teach you about facets of the leadership principles and how you can use those to pick the perfect examples from your career history. It tells you literally what the interviewer is looking for in your customer obsession example. It's like literally a tick sheet. And then there's a little mock interview at the end, me interviewing me, different hair, makeup, etc. It's totally cool. But it tells you all about customer obsession. Please go check it out. It also gives you access to our incredible free Discord community. We have over 2,000 people in our Discord community helping each other out, answering each other's questions, sharing their experiences. So even if you're not interested in customer obsession, which you should be, it's worth it just to get access to that Discord community of Amazon candidates. I think that's it. So on that note, we are done for this week. Thank you so much to everyone for showing up. For those of you who got jobs, congratulations. For those of you who have interviews coming up, we wish you the very best of luck. And again, please do like and comment on our videos. We put so much effort into this channel for you. Hopefully it's a very teeny thing to ask in return. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yevgeny. It's lovely to see you. And
It's great to see you too.
see you all soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
We can end the broadcast this time.
Okay, I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna press the button.
Press the button.